Hey there, folks. Welcome to Advisory. Hope you guys are all doing well. And I hope you enjoyed those agree disagree questions from before this video. I want us to be thinking of these questions while we're talking about our topic today, which is AI and how it relates to education. This is not the first time this year that we've talked about AI. A couple of weeks ago, I had you watch this video right here, which was this journalist from Vox who talked to all sorts of teachers and students and professors and tech people about AI and its effect on education. And AI is constantly growing. It comes in a lot of forms. A lot of what people think of as AI is Chat GPT or other chatbots like it. And as suggested by the title of this video, a lot of those chatbots are pretty good and can handle just about any task that you throw at them. Hey man, tell me a joke. No, tell me a dumb joke.
Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Ha 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 ha.
I don't get it. Explain that joke as though I was 5 years old.
Okay, so a scarecrow is a pretend person made out of sticks and gold clothes farmers put him in. Now it's an outstanding really, but when outstanding outside the field for being great, but it's really just because it's outside in the field.
Okay, I gotta go to the bathroom. Bye.
Haha, okay, hope everything goes smoothly. Haha, bye.
Hey man, hey, cut that out. And there's one part in particular that I want us to take another look at, which is this chapter right here called The Science of Learning. So whether or not AI can do a work of a human, whether or not the AI can write papers or answer homework questions or whatever is not really the point of our conversation today. Sure, it can do those things, but what does that really do for us?
Let's take a look at how learning works. And this is where the challenge to education really lies, because technology is usually supposed to make things easy, but the research shows that real learning requires things to be a little bit hard. Let me give you an example. I use GPS almost constantly to get around the city. It tells me which train or bus I need, which subway exit to take, basically how to walk. A bunch of studies have looked at how this affects our spatial abilities, because hey, maybe watching this app produce instructions for my route is teaching me how to get around. It's giving me all of these examples to learn from. But no. The experiments consistently show that turn-by-turn navigation leaves us with poorer spatial knowledge of the area.
Wait,
and
what?
That's because the tech lets us disengage from our environment. If I really wanted to build a cognitive map of the space, that requires active engagement in the navigation process.
Okay, hold on. Many of you are driving now or starting to drive and have used maps to get around the city, maybe your own neighborhood. But as she's saying, you become more spatially aware. You learn the actual layout of your environment quicker if you don't use turn by turn navigation. Sometimes you have to, right? Obviously, it's a great tool. But if your goal is to learn the layout of your neighborhood or to understand where you are directionally, then this doesn't really help. In fact, it keeps you from learning the things that you need to learn.
If I really wanted to build a cognitive map of the space, that requires active engagement in the navigation process. And that means making decisions, which is hard. And I may decide that it's fine to offload my spatial learning to this app and just expect that it will always be there for me. But what about learning in other domains, like in school?
Oh my gosh, tell us.
There's a really interesting study from a few years back where they divided college students into two classrooms that covered the exact same physics lesson, but in different ways. So one class presented the material in a passive lecture.
And it was done in a way that it would mimic a lecture from a super lecture.
Oh, hello, Luis.
Like very smooth, very, very fluent.
The other class used an active learning method where the students were put into small groups and then given unfamiliar problems to work on.
They weren't given much direction, so it was a bit frustrating. And then the instructor would interrupt them and then explain, basically give them the feedback of how an expert thinks about these things.
At the end of the class, they asked the students if they felt like they learned a great deal from the session. And the students who received the passive lecture said that they learned more than those who did the active learning class. They were also more likely to say that all of their physics classes should be taught that way. They preferred just watching the lecture, but they were wrong.
Whoa, what do you mean? So one class was a lecture, the other class was group work and struggling with problems, doing more difficult work that they then got feedback on. And what the students wanted was this right here, was the active lecture where they could sit and get the information. But apparently, They were incorrect.
Tests on the material showed that the students in the active participation class actually learned more of the information.
Whoa.
It turns out that we're not great at judging how well we're learning.
Whenever we try and judge if a learning experience is productive or not, the strongest metacognitive cue that we use is perception of fluency.
Fluency is when information is going down easy. It's well presented, it's organized, it's convenient. Fluency is the reason why students tend to reread their notes and textbooks when they're studying, when really they should be giving themselves quizzes or trying to explain the material in their own words. Education researchers have this term, desirable difficulties, which describes this kind of effortful participation that really works, but also kind of hurts. And the risk with AI is that we might not preserve that effort, especially because we already tend to misinterpret a little bit of struggling as a signal that we're not learning.
I want them to know that struggling is okay.
It's not about getting the right answer. It's not about having the correct opinion.
It's not about having the correct answer or not about having the correct opinion. And of course, you may be thinking to yourself,
Well, when it's on a test, it's definitely all about the right answer.
which is very true, but we're talking about learning here. We're talking about how you best learn. And as she was saying earlier, it is not through just reading things. It is through this desirable difficulty where you want to struggle. That is where you're learning the most, is when you are struggling with something.
You do not become a better writer by just editing other people's work. You do it through the struggle.
The text is kind of like the snakeskin of the growth. You can replicate the snakeskin, but there's a reason you chose to be in this room, and the reason is the path. The reason isn't the product.
Okay, I don't know what that guy was talking about snakes for, but he's right. The reason is the path, not the product. The learning happens in the path, in the struggle, not necessarily in getting the best product or the most perfect answer.
So with all that said, we can look back at those prompts and ask, is this making the work easy for me? Or is it motivating me to try the hard things? So you could use a chatbot to avoid reading a challenging text, or you could use it to work through that text and help you get more out of it.
Tried to read like the prose Edda, and it was just impossible to read for me. It was very, very hard.
Whoa. What's that guy? What's that person? Snorri Sturluson. That's not a real name, is it?
Hello there, my name's Snorri Sturluson, and I'm writing words that nobody can understand.
I think that ChatGPT might be able to, parse through some of the harder language, simplify things.
You could use it to answer questions for you, or it could inspire you to ask questions you wouldn't have asked before.
If you have a question in class and you're not sure what to do with it, now your first step, instead of going to a teaching assistant or a friend, might be to ask ChatGPT.
You could use it to write or rewrite your words to sound perfect, or you could ask it to critique your writing, and then you decide how you want to make changes.
Where are there problems in the logic? Where are there, sentences that aren't clear, and so on?
There's a point in which the student has to make that realization and say, okay, this is where I need to work on this, and this is where I need to use ChatGPT, and this is where I need to not use ChatGPT.
So you see the differences between those examples, from the idea of having it do it for you versus having it have a conversation with you, almost like a teacher would, of asking it, what are some of the things that I can fix? Where are the problems in my logic, like the teacher before said? But as this student says, as with any new technology, there has to be some sort of discernment, some sort of thought and intentionality with when we do and when we do not use it. And this is a whole brand new thing for everybody. And so it is something that we have to be very careful when we navigate, but also very intentional. Which brings us to this. If you go to Longhorn Country and you find the W.T. White Campus Culture Handbook, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a new edition, which is our W.T. White Generative AI Use Policy. There are 4 expectations and 4 key points to remember for W.T. White students when they interact with AI technology in an educational environment. So you can go and read all of these on your own, but I'm going to go through them point by point just so we're all clear on what they are. The first expectation for students is to be thoughtful in your interaction. Engage with AI tools thoughtfully and deliberately, which means on purpose and with purpose, understanding their capabilities and limitations. It's very cool, the things that they can do, but it's also important to remember that this is new technology. And so there's going to be several things that have to be worked out before it's perfected. You have to recognize when AI is appropriate for authentic learning and when it is not. That means if you're using AI and it feels like cheating,
it might be cheating.
If you're not struggling, if you're not authentically learning, or if you're not using the AI tool to better your learning experience rather than just do it for you, then you're not necessarily using it thoughtfully. You're not using it for the purpose of authentic learning. The next one is responsible use. You should use AI responsibly, ensuring that it aligns with the assignment goals and contributes positively to learning outcomes. Notice it didn't say contributes positively to the product or the paper or the answer. It contributes positively to how you learn and how well you learn. When you use AI, you need to credit or cite AI resources rather than claiming the output as entirely human generated, and then consider the ethical implications of AI use, such as potential biases in AI generated content. The next expectation is open dialogue. There's no reason to be sneaky about this. We all know that these things exist. We just want to maintain an open dialogue. And this is why I'm making this video, is to start that open dialogue. We should maintain an open dialogue about AI use, seeking guidance to enhance learning while addressing concerns about technology application. Transparency and collaboration are the key to effective AI integration. That means you should work with your teachers when using AI, not trying to sneak around your teachers using AI. It should be an open dialogue, because the main thing here is not how good something looks or how good AI can make something sound or look. The main thing here is learning. And then the last expectation is accountability. Remember that you are ultimately responsible for any work that you submit, even if you use AI tools to help with that work. This includes the accuracy of information, implied meanings, and proper attribution of sources. Always verify AI's outputs and make sure that they meet academic standards. And make sure they're true. Sometimes AI just spits out some random stuff that may or may not be true, and so you really got to watch it. You're responsible for whatever you turn in ultimately, not AI. And so make sure that you have the final say in what you turn in. So those are the expectations. Here are some key points for students to remember. Number one is that effort matters. AI usage is a skill, so practice and patience are required to improve your results. It needs to feel like that desirable difficulty they were talking about in the video. It needs to feel tough. You need to put forth an effort rather than using AI to remove that effort. Very important here. Do not blindly trust AI responses, and always verify facts or numbers provided by AI tools, because maybe they're correct, but maybe they're not. You want to also acknowledge AI use. At the end of any project or assignment where you've used AI, you need to explain how and why you used it and what prompts you used. This transparency is essential for academic honesty. And finally, the ethical considerations. Make sure you're mindful of ethical implications of using AI, including bias and data privacy. You want to consider which company is doing the AI or creating the AI, whether or not you can trust that company, if they have any other aims or goals. You just got to be real careful. It's a brand new world, and we've got to navigate it thoughtfully. And like I said, all of these expectations and key points are at the bottom of our Campus Climate Handbook for you to look at, which you'll need to do for our next activity. This is the next slide. I know it's a lot of words, but that's the entire policy written out. You can review it there, or you can review it by pulling it up on Longhorn Country. But on the next few slides after this, there are examples of AI use. And I want you to go through as a class each one of those examples, and then tell me, according to these guidelines, is the use acceptable, unacceptable, or is there somewhere in between? Is it kind of acceptable, or does it depend? That kind of thing. And this is the first example. Read this. Using AI to generate a list of synonyms of a word when you can't think of the word that you want to use. Everybody knows that feeling where it's just like, what's the word? What's the word? Is using AI to help with that acceptable, unacceptable, or somewhere in between, according to our new guidelines? And why? Always answer why. Always be thinking about what this use of AI is doing to your learning process. But I hope you find that interesting. I hope you have good conversations about AI use in education. If you have any suggestions or any questions that we need to explore further in advisory about AI, make sure that you go to the advisory page on Longhorn Country and fill out a feedback form to tell me what you'd like to talk about, or you can always email me. But enjoy that. Have a great rest of your day. Be good to yourself and others, and I will see you very soon.